It's just that there are other things that are now taking up attention in addition to kind of the basic hygiene of having good data, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think about AI, what's the first thing you think of when you hear AI? In my experience, it's generative content, right? People think about Chat GPT.
Welcome to the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for business leaders who are looking to accelerate value from their investments in customer experience and culture together. I'm excited to talk today to Kirk Hanson, who's a friend and partner that I've been working with. He's at a company called CXL Marketing, and we'll talk more about our collaboration throughout the conversation. Thanks for joining today, Kirk.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Excited to be here.
You've been a successful entrepreneur in the services space, Kirk. Do you want to share a little bit more about your experience in marketing and technology and what led you to launch CXL?
Yeah, sure. So I've spent, basically my whole career in marketing technology. I've been everywhere from client side to marketing services companies like Epsilon to Equifax. I've had a couple of my own ventures, and I've been on the software side of things. So I've kind of had the fortunate experience to view things from kind of every different angle. And I've kind of lived in the intersection between data and marketing technology, which always seems to be a critical piece. I launched CXL really because the market opportunity around, AI and a game-changing technology like AI, in my experience, always heightens the importance on data cleanliness, data accuracy, and it's a great opportunity to really leverage what we do best, which is understand and integrate and clean data and make it fit for purpose for any type of marketing technology. And that's really the problem we're most focused on, and the opportunity that we're trying to take advantage of on behalf of our clients.
Well, a lot of people are investing in data, and it's growing in importance, not just because of the importance of first-party data with the deprecation of cookies coming, but a lot of companies see this as like a critical enabler of good customer experience. Can you talk a little bit more and share your thoughts about how is the data game changing, and where do you see people focus more now, particularly as it connects to customer experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you kind of hit on it a little bit. I think a lot of times good things happen for bad reasons, right? And I think the whole privacy legislation that's, basically eliminating third-party cookies is creating a sense of urgency for people, kind of a renewed sense of urgency around their data. But frankly, I've always been an advocate for, maintaining and nourishing and enhancing your first party data asset. I've done a lot of work with due diligence with investment companies, and, it really is one of the biggest assets any company has. When an investment company goes in, it's right near the top of the list to understand the quality of their data, the integration of the data, how the technology stack in general, right? How modernized it is, as one of the first things near the top or at the top of the list. So it's critical. It's always been critical to me. It seems like there's a new technology every, 7 to 10 years, and it always leads back to data. If your data's not right, you're not going to get everything you can out of the technology. And that's true for AI, right? If you feed it garbage, you're not going to get the quality results from AI that you would if your data is clean and organized.
So in the past, there were a lot of, and I'm not saying this is no longer true, but a lot of the impetus for focusing on data historically was like master data management, make sure we have quality data. If you don't actually have good processes for getting the data in and cleaning it up and making sure it's up to date, then things can go off the rails, right? And that creates a lot of extra swirl inside the company because the data is wrong. And there are reports recently that half of the data that's used for ad targeting is actually wrong. That was an ad age. So problem has not gone away. It's just that there are other things that are now taking up attention in addition to kind of the basic hygiene of having good data, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think about AI, what's the first thing you think of when you hear AI? In my experience, it's generative content, right? People think about Chat GPT. The example I use with my customers, using your 50% metric. Imagine if you're trying to write a recommendation or a job description or whatever you're using Chat GPT for, and you do your bullet list with all your keywords that you're going to upload into Chat GPT. Now replace every other word with a random word and imagine what kind of results you're going to get. Well, that's the same thing that's going to happen with AI when you're predicting customer behavior. It has to be clean or you're not going to get the results out of AI that you're hoping for.
Yeah. So this is like, don't go past go if you don't have your data right? It's going to impact everything else, massively if your data is wrong, and it's going to create a lot of swirl. And, so it's not just one source of truth in the company, but accuracy matters. Otherwise, it'll impact the ROI of your investments and create a lot of swirl. A next step we often hear is, how do we put the data, create one source of truth, create one view of the customer to make sure that that there's, and that's been a lot of the impetus for customer data platforms, as opposed to data warehouses and data lakes, which do allow you to centralize data and allow you to make sure you have accuracy and you're doing stuff with it. I think the main difference for our audience between a CDP, a customer data platform, and prior investments in data warehousing and data lakes is that a CDP allows you to own the data and then to drive execution with the data externally, whereas a lot of the efforts with data lakes and data warehouses are actually reporting in BI as opposed to real-time execution externally. Love to hear your thoughts, Kirk, about how this is evolving and what the differences are between these different things, and getting beyond a data accuracy. Did I get that right? Anything else you want to share with the audience?
That's exactly how I describe it. Yeah, I mean, really, a CDP is really about operationalizing your data, right? Making sure that it's up to date and as close to real time as possible, because that's when customer interactions happen, right? It could be in a call center while you're on the phone and you need to know about a purchase that happened a few minutes ago, right? Versus, kind of the old OLAP, analytic processing needs around a data warehouse. Those are very different, right? What you want there is the ability to query things fast, to change your queries and get quick results. But often it doesn't matter if the data is a day old in those environments, right? So one is really for analytics and geared and tuned for analytics, versus a CDP that's really operationalizing the data and making it readily accessible when it's, in as close to real time as possible. I think you hit the nail on that.
Right. Like companies are still going to have DMPs for ad targeting and working with the trade desks of the world to go out and buy and sell ad inventory. Then they might have a CDP also to get into some of the retention and optimization of the experience beyond acquisition marketing. You can use a CDP for acquisition too, but mainly because you want to own the data. But usually it's the retention and loyalty use cases that are driving investment in the CDP, not the marketing acquisition.
Yep, 100%. I wish it were just those few data stores that you need, but I think I read something recently. The average number of data stores a company has is something like 81 different data stores. And, that's just kind of mind blowing. But if you think about, Scott Brinker and architecture and all the different technologies, I think what happens is a lot of companies pick up a technology to solve a specific problem and hold on to that technology in that niche kind of use case and keep buying other technologies. Now you're creating point solutions and you're creating disparate data across the whole organization. And what we find at CXL is every few years, companies need to re-rationalize that, because those point solutions have a lot of overlapping capabilities. And so that the price you're paying for the complexity isn't worth the number of solutions that you have. And there's really a big opportunity to kind of reduce that footprint and modernize your technology into a much simpler footprint that's more ready for operationalization, right? For using in real time.
I'd love to build on what you're saying for a moment, Kirk. That is something that I've talked about in some past podcasts, for example, with Sid Banerjee from Qualtrics, and that we talked about this. The you talked about simplifying and rationalizing and operationalizing. If you kind of step back from that for a minute and think about the kind of the growth flywheel you're investing in creating, that there's a business case that you can make and actually make it self-funding the investment in your growth flywheel, because the cost savings you can achieve from vendor rationalization of your footprint, the number of data stores, the number of vendors you're working with, the amount of efforts that go into maintaining your data. You might spend some money up front on software and services to get going, but the savings on costs of vendor rationalization, as well as the cost of quality, as well as things like research and testing, these cost savings are much greater than the investments in the incremental software and services to realize those savings. And the cost savings actually fund your investment in capabilities that drive the growth. So paying attention to data, paying attention to technology rationalization is actually a way to pay for all your growth investments.
It's something we see every time. And to your point, the other side of the coin is you're adding capabilities typically when you do that as well, right? So with the new platform comes AI, integrated AI, and so in addition to simplifying and reducing cost, you're gaining capability on the other end.
Yeah, and actually that's a good segue. You and I have a webinar coming up we're doing together with OptiMove in I think it's November 16th at 1 p.m. and you can see I'm sure now the invitation up on the screen magically appearing while we're talking. I'm excited to team with you, Kirk, and OptiMove, and love to hear your thoughts to share with the audience about like why you're leaning in more with OptiMove as one of they're a CDP plus journey orchestration. They actually got Magic Quadrant scores from Gartner as a journey orchestration platform, but they're a platform that actually has many new capabilities. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about why you personally have chosen to lean in more with them and spend so much of your energy on them as a partner.
Yeah, good question. I think, like I said, the market opportunity for me was around AI, right? It's game-changing technology. It's gonna create an emphasis on data, which is where we play. And so it was important to me to find a technology that grew up with AI first. And there's not many of them out there. In fact, I was having a really hard time finding it, and I bumped into a former client of mine who is now introduced me to OptiMove, and and the story there is that, they've been around for something like 10 years, and they started in AI. That's where they began, focused on high transactional data.
They did a lot in the gaming industry.
Right.
Initially, like casinos, where their Markov decision theory and modeling and propensity to engage, and they could optimize decisions to move people along the customer journey. I think that's where the name comes from, optimizing the movement along the journey.
That's right. And they did that early on. That they grew into orchestration, and it was important to me to find a technology that came at it from that direction, as opposed to someone who's just learning AI and trying to bolt it on to whatever they have existing. And that's really what drove me to OptiMove and what's so attractive about it to me.
I think they went from casinos to emerging brands like Dollar Shave and retailers and healthcare and financial services. So they broadened across industries, but they started in very high velocity markets where there's a lot of value in modeling customer lifetime behavior and decision making and propensity to engage.
Yeah, and you can see with a replenishment type product, like the healthcare products, how fitting an application that would be, right? So kind of natural evolution, and it's exciting to see it growing.
We're going to talk in our webinar on November 16th about AI and driving a culture of experimentation. So how you can use AI to drive ongoing approaches to, build more experimentation into your business. So, data is critical. Let's talk a little bit more about how you apply the data and the experimentation. Like, how do you see companies, using AI, using new tools to actually reinforce the velocity of experiments and testing and learning?
Yeah, it's a good question. The use cases are almost unlimited, right? When you think about AI generally, and it expands far beyond predicting customer behavior. But when I think about it, and when I'm thinking about CXL and where our expertise is, it's really about customer acquisition. It's marketing, right? Acquisition and retention. And so it's really about optimizing for a specific goal. And what I've learned is you need to be really specific and careful about how you define that goal. Because if you get the goal wrong, AI is going to optimize for the wrong things with the data and could lead you down a path
And the goal can differ by stage of the journey.
100%. For example,
but you're raising a really good point. Is like, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, you may be trying to optimize for clicks in online advertising. That's very different from optimizing for conversion for a second or third purchase down the road. And the transactional data you need for that is obviously very different than what you would use down the road as well.
That's an important point for the audience, that if you just focus on like measuring the outcome of purchase and think about like outcome-based marketing, and a lot of people talk about the collapse of the purchase funnel, of going from being able to measure advertising and measure outcome, and the kind of multi-touch attribution to measure the outcome of the ad campaign. That can be valuable as a way of getting ROI, but it misses a broader opportunity to think about moving people through the journey. And at different stages of the journey, there are different outcomes you can optimize. So sales is an important outcome, but there are other outcomes earlier in the journey. And AI actually and the data provide an opportunity to optimize at multiple stages of the journey. Acquisition marketing, if there are multiple touches throughout engagement to purchase, there's actually multiple points on the journey you can optimize, not just the upfront marketing acquisition.
And as part of that, you define the transactional set that's most relevant, right? So it does kind of give you a way to phase in an AI deployment, right? Instead of boiling the ocean where you're going to get all your data right and all your data together from, acquisition efforts to ongoing journey type steps and interactions with customers, you can take it piece by piece and grow into it. And usually what drives that is where the business value is, right? Is there an acquisition goal for the company? Is it a retention goal? What are you trying to do? And you can back into how you roll that out.
How do you see the lessons learned and kind of application of data and tech differing for the larger versus emerging companies? Are there any lessons learned that the big companies can learn from the small companies, or things the smaller companies need to do differently before they get bigger? Let's unpack it so it's not so, one size fits all.
Yeah, it's definitely not one size fits all. I think what I see is that the smaller companies have a much stronger tendency to build versus buy. Because if you think about the way they organically grow, it's sort of like they have a product they want to bring to market or a service they want to bring to market, and data is sort of an afterthought, and then they're forced to manage it. So they hire someone to do that, and oftentimes their growth exceeds kind of their technical capabilities, where at some point they have to flip that from build versus buy to we need to go out and buy something or bring in a services company to augment our staff to take advantage and be competitive with companies that have these best of breed tools in place and are leveraging them, right? That's kind of the evolution. And so there's implications to your question along the way there, right? As far as, I think if smaller companies can sort of know that this problem is coming and think ahead a little bit about what technologies would be most important to my company, it's probably better to bring them in early and grow with them than to, try to build it yourself and then have this big data mess later on and and different silos of functionality that you need to rationalize in order to get into an environment where you can take advantage of new capabilities.
Well, and also, I've seen this with smaller companies. I've seen this with bigger companies. With the really big company, often the issue is that there's so many initiatives and so many things they want to fund, and there's so much complexity that when they look at the menu of all the things they could do, it's often like 5x their affordability. So it'd be like, okay, we could spend hundreds of millions of dollars on customer experience, but what are the $20 to $100 million to invest that'll give us the highest ROI and the best return on our effort too, not just money, but all the time and energy we're going to put into the change and driving the adoption. At a smaller company, the issue is also affordability, but they have to figure out what they can go do to get that next wave of growth. And as you're pointing out, a lot of times they kind of get into, they have to address the data, they have to address it, but they might actually be suboptimal with more of an organic approach because they're not paying as much explicit attention to it and they have to come back to it later. So and in fact, the situations of bigger companies are often a result of they've grown without weeding the garden, right? So the smaller companies need to pay attention to this upfront, which then makes it affordable to go after that next wave of growth and not have to weed the garden later.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think regardless of size, there needs to be kind of constant rationalization of your technical stack, right? I think the good companies, the best companies, are looking at what kind of overlap in capabilities do they have, and looking what kind of new capabilities exist. And how do we re-rationalize our technology stack every year to keep it streamlined and simple and cost-effective as possible, right? I think it doesn't matter if you're an enterprise or a small company. That should be part of your normal housekeeping as you build the company out.
So what you're talking about, Kirk, is the weeding the garden and the data and the technology side of things. But throughout our conversations, you've also been talking about the way you apply it, the way you operationalize things. I'd like to shift the gears a little bit towards more the culture connection. This is the CX and culture connection. And, it's often said that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And what do people mean? Well, if you don't pay attention to the operational, if you don't pay attention to the behavior, to the change management, then your strategy, no matter the good intentions, will fail. And I'd love to explore a little more about, what does that mean for data and technology? What are some of the cultural behaviors that you see as most important to get more out of your investments in data-driven marketing and customer experience?
Just before I jump into that, we get pulled into a lot of opportunities where a company has failed at deploying a technology. We get pulled in after the fact to come kind of clean up the pieces. And far and above, the number one reason that happens, the reason that companies don't adopt a new technology, is all due to change management. It's like 99% of the time, it's a change management issue. It's not a deployment problem. It's not a capabilities issue. It's change management, and that's broad. I mean, it can be things like, how you address education of the staff on new technologies. But there's a few key things I think companies need to do. I think number one is it needs to be driven both top down and bottom up, change management. It's critical that from the top down, people have an expectation that technology is not going to solve the problem, that there needs to be a mindset and a cultural shift in the organization to take advantage of this technology. And from the C-suite down, they need to support and understand what that means, right? Kind of functionally. From the bottom up, there's a lot of things you can do, but there's always people who are using the technology, who are hands-on, who are quicker to adopt it, who are more open to change, who want to learn something new. And I think the companies that do it well spend time rewarding those people and recognizing those people. And that kind of brings the from the bottom up, brings everyone along into the new technology. And I think some combination of those two things you need in order just to get the technology adopted, not even to get the most out of it at that point.
I like the bottom up, top down. For me, the top down is about leadership and about the vision of where you're going and connecting your data and technology investments of why they're key enablers to the vision of where you're going, and having your leaders engage deeper into the organization to explain why this is important, and push down. And then the bottom up ultimately, is about building that broader movement in the organization where the mindsets, the behaviors, the skills, the relationship networks, those are the building blocks of a culture. They grow and you reinforce, from the bottom up, all the behaviors and mindsets and skills that are needed to get value out of this. And how do you nurture and unleash the energy of all your people? That leaders can help with that, but there are things you can do proactively in your organization to actually, spark those opportunities for your culture. And paying attention about the top down and the bottom up is key to take a culturally sensitive approach to change management. If all you do is communicate what hey, this is the technology, this is the investment, and this is why we're doing it, that's like running one play in a football game and running 10 yards and declaring victory.
Yep. 100%.
Right? There's a whole lot more work to do.
A whole lot more. And worse, if you don't address the change management piece, what you see happen a lot is people are doing the same old things with a new technology that they don't know, they don't understand as well. And so instead of becoming more efficient, it's become less efficient, and they're not taking advantage of any of the new capabilities that were the reason you procured the new technology in the first place, right? So, it's critical. It's a critical component to any type of technical initiative, from my perspective.
So, where do you think things are going now? What do you see on the kind of now and next, like in technology? Where do you focus on today most, and where do you think things are going in the future?
It's a good question. I got asked the question by one of the investment companies if I saw AI as an enabler to CDPs or a destructor for CDPs, and 100%. There's no part of me that sees it as destructive or competitive in any way with kind of CDPs and CDP capabilities, because it's created an emphasis on the data. And again, if the data is not right, AI is not going to help you. So I think, we see a lot of companies trying to really get their arms around their technical stack, re-rationalizing things, reevaluating for tools that really have an integrated AI component, regardless of where it sits in the stack, whether it's, content management or digital advertising or, orchestration and CDP type capabilities. They're looking for the embedded new capabilities in that technology, and at the same time trying to get their data in order. I think that's where things are going from a tactical perspective with the companies I talk to. Strategically, I think the use cases for AI will just continue to grow. And ultimately, there will be solutions that, instead of being point solutions for AI, will be, holistic applications for AI, where the AI is actually optimizing different components within the organization. But I think we're a few years away from that, right? I think that's down the road.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of things that are enabled by AI today, whether it's summarization, whether it's content generation, whether it's generating new insights, whether it's generating new ways of personalizing execution. You keep going. There's enormous applications of AI. It's not a new phenomenon. It's just the technology is cheaper and better than it was by leaps and bounds over the last few years. We're accelerating. But if you look across those different use cases, there's a common thread, which is to get value out of this, you need to change behavior. Technology will not solve the problems we have in our organizations without behavior changing. which is why culture not only is key to the successful change management to adopt it, but to get ongoing iterative improvement. Like if we don't pay attention to the behavior and approach it not as a one-time change management exercise to roll something out, but view it as actually fundamentally evolving as a catalyst to behavior in the organization, otherwise you're sub-optimizing the impact. You're spending a lot of energy it's like a long road to a small house, right? So like you'll be a long time to implement and less impact. So if you pay attention to culture and CX at the same time, you're actually building the flow of energy in your organization. You're not only reducing the risk of failure of the program, you're actually building the energy and getting your flywheel to spin faster. So that's why I'm so excited to collaborate. Is you want to fix the data. Yeah, you want to invest in the technology. It's critically important. But if you don't do that together with their culturally sensitive approach to change management and intentionality on the culture, you're going to get way less ROI.
Absolutely. Every time.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why I'm excited about the partnership as well.
So thank you for coming on today. What can people do to learn more about CXL? How can they get in touch with you? How can they learn more about what you guys are doing, what you're thinking?
Yeah, our website is cxlresults.com. There's a contact us page in there if you want to contact me directly. That will ultimately make it to my desk. So that's a great place to start. And thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and was great talking to you today.
It's always a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the webinar. I'm excited to be collaborating with clients together and growing our partnership further. Looking forward to doing more stuff with OptiMove together and other companies that we're teaming with. And I hope this podcast sparks some great ideas for our audience, and look forward to the conversations we're going to have with everybody.